Joining us now at Post 9 is Plexo Capital's Toney. Glad you made the trip east and you're here with us.
Thank you.
So what's riding, do you think, now on Nvidia, just given the conversation around big tech? And we're obviously fixated on Apple today because it's a big story. And I'll ask you about it in a minute.
Okay.
But this one first.
Yeah, sure. What we saw this week was a lot of announcements by the AI companies. You could almost call this AI week, right? So you had Google I.O., which is probably now just Google AI. You had Microsoft, you had Anthropic, you had OpenAI. And so I think what we're seeing is we're seeing a little bit of a split in the stack now, more like a barbell, I might want to call it, where you have the companies like Nvidia that are sitting at the infrastructure layer. And then above that are the large language models like Anthropic and OpenAI. And then on top of that are all the vertical AI, the services, the agents, all of the things that either the enterprise or consumers are using as end users. And I believe what's happening, speaking to Nvidia, is that we're seeing a lot of value created on that infrastructure layer, right? The people that control the chips to be able to provide the compute power for the LLMs. And then on top of the LLMs are people building really nice models that are very interesting to be able to take advantage of that power that is provided by the LLM. So we're kind of seeing a little bit of a barbell effect, and I think a little bit of a commoditization of the LLMs, right? I think what's ended up happening is they are almost becoming a utility of sorts. If you think back to the early days of the internet, you know, the internet providers initially were able to have a lot of value that accrued to them from the enterprise value that was generated by the internet, but ultimately providing internet service itself became somewhat of a utility, and then the value accrued to the folks that were creating the interesting apps, either on your computer or on your phone.
Okay, there are a number of things I want to ask you. Let's go right through the major issues, really, of the week and of the times in tech, besides Nvidia obviously looming large. Trump relationship risk for these CEOs. Front and center, obviously, today and in recent days with Tim Cook. I bring it up because when you talk about Nvidia, you know, Jensen Huang, he goes to the Middle East, he shows his face out there. The president knows that. A lot of the other tech heavyweights were out there. Tim Cook was not. What kind of relationship risk do you think really does exist with these names?
I don't know how much I would push down the risk spectrum in terms of having those relationships. I think what we're seeing is that the realization we've entered a new world where I think policy, government relations have been important for some time, but it was more around making sure that the regulation was going to be open enough for companies to be able to innovate. I think now what we're seeing is, you know, policy leading to deals. Right, and so I think that's a very interesting area, and I think that's why you see so many people spending time down in West Palm Beach or in Washington, D.C. Now, there are some good things around this, right? Like if you look at what's happening with AI and the legislation that was pulled back from the past administration, I think overall for tech, that is a good thing for innovation. And I think we'll have to wait and see how these other things play out.
Okay, Google. Stock has rallied back pretty nicely since the Eddie Q sell-off. You know what I'm alluding to because we talked about it a lot. Eddie Q's in a courtroom. He says, well, you know, search on the browser has fallen for the first time ever. Google shares go down. Everybody says, oh, my gosh, this is an existential threat. Well, we've been worried about with the LLMs eating into the search of Google. Stock, as I said, has rallied back nicely. Was that overplayed?
Not in the short term. Not in the short. In the short term, I think, you know, I should say not in the long term. In the short term, I think yes. But I think when you start to plot out the trends of search terms on Google, it's reflected in some of the announcements they made this week around incorporating more of the Gemini 2.5 with their search to create a more chat-like experience to replicate not only what someone can do on OpenAI, but I would actually maybe focus a little bit more on even a Perplexity, right? Because Perplexity, again, when we think about the barbell effect, Perplexity is sitting on top of all of the LLMs and creating a really compelling experience. So
it's a wrapper.
Correct. Yeah, sitting on top is an application at that layer so that they don't have to worry about investing all the money into creating the models. They're just sitting on top of the models and routing the queries based on what's needed to the best LLM for that query. Okay.